At exactly 3:17 in the morning, your eyes snap open. You weren't dreaming. There was no noise, no alarm, nothing. You just woke up. Again. And in the silence of that room, your mind does something almost cruel. It starts calculating. The meeting tomorrow, the email you forgot to send, the conversation you replayed 50 times and still can't make sense of. Your chest tightens, your heart ticks upward. You glance at the clock, and you already know. This is going to be one of those nights. Here's what nobody tells you about that moment. What just happened has nothing to do with willpower, nothing to do with having too much on your mind, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how tired you are. It is a biological system, ancient, powerful, and right now completely hijacked, doing exactly what it was designed to do. By the end of this video, you'll understand precisely what that system is, why stress doesn't just worry you, it physically prevents sleep, and more importantly, the 3 interventions backed by clinical research that can actually reverse it. Let's start with the scale of what we're actually talking about, because stress-related insomnia is not a fringe problem. It is not a lifestyle inconvenience for the overscheduled few. According to the American Psychological Association's 2023 Stress in America report, 43% of adults say that stress has directly disrupted their sleep in the past month. Not occasionally, regularly. The World Health Organization classifies insomnia as a global epidemic. The CDC reports that 1 in 3 American adults regularly fails to get the recommended minimum of 7 hours of sleep. And a 2022 study published in the journal Sleep Medicine Reviews found something that should stop you cold. Stress is the single most commonly reported trigger for insomnia onset. Not a contributing factor, not something that makes it a little harder. The trigger. Ahead of pain, ahead of medication side effects, ahead of psychiatric conditions. This means that for millions of people, the inability to sleep didn't start with a sleep problem at all. It started with a stress response that never fully turned off. Now, most people, most doctors, honestly, treat these as 2 separate problems running in parallel. You're stressed and you can't sleep. Address the stress and the sleep will follow. Calm the mind and the body will rest. But that framing is wrong, and it is costing people years, sometimes decades, of healthy sleep. Stress and insomnia are not parallel problems. They are locked in a feedback loop, a closed circuit where each one continuously powers the other. Here's how that circuit works. Stress reduces sleep quality. Poor sleep quality raises cortisol and adrenaline production the following day, which amplifies emotional reactivity and makes anxiety harder to regulate, which makes stress harder to manage, which makes sleep harder to achieve that night, which raises stress further. Researchers at UC Berkeley, in a landmark 2019 study led by neuroscientist Matthew Walker, demonstrated this cycle empirically. They measured the neurological effects of a single night of sleep deprivation and found that it amplified emotional reactivity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, by up to 60%. 60%. Not somewhat more sensitive, not a little on edge. 60% more reactive to perceived threats after a single night of poor sleep. That means, after one bad night, you are neurologically primed to perceive more threats, generate more anxiety, produce more cortisol, and virtually guarantee that the next night will be just as difficult. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable brain chemistry in real time. And yet, the standard advice people receive when they complain of stress-related insomnia is, try to relax before bed, put your phone down, practice gratitude, think positive thoughts. If you have tried those things and they did not work, you are not weak, undisciplined, or permanently broken. You are fighting a biological cascade with advice designed for people who are not experiencing one. Let's talk about what that cascade actually looks like inside your body. To understand why stress keeps you awake, you need to understand one system, the HPA axis. That stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, and it is your body's central stress response highway, the biological alarm system that has kept humans alive for 300,000 years. Here is a simple way to picture it. Stage 1. Your hypothalamus, deep in the center of your brain, roughly the size of an almond, detects a threat. It doesn't matter if the threat is a predator outside your cave or a performance review at 9 in the morning tomorrow. To the hypothalamus, threat is threat.
Stage 2. It signals the pituitary gland, which releases a cascade of messenger hormones. Think of it as a 911 call being dispatched through your nervous system. Stage 3. That signal reaches the adrenal glands, two small triangular organs sitting directly on top of your kidneys, and they flood your bloodstream with the two chemicals you've definitely heard of, cortisol and adrenaline. Now, cortisol gets a terrible reputation, but the molecule itself is not the villain. Under normal, healthy conditions, cortisol follows a beautiful, precise rhythm. It peaks between 8 and 9 in the morning, which is part of what pulls you out of sleep and gives you early alertness. It then gradually, steadily declines throughout the day. By 10 or 11 at night, cortisol levels reach their absolute lowest point of the entire 24-hour cycle. And that low cortisol state is not incidental to sleep. It is one of the key physiological prerequisites for sleep onset. Here is the problem. Chronic stress flattens that curve, or inverts it entirely. A 2021 study from the National Institute of Mental Health tracked cortisol rhythms in adults with chronic insomnia against healthy sleepers. The insomnia group showed significantly elevated cortisol levels in the evening and nighttime hours, precisely when those levels should be at their lowest. Their stress system did not know how to turn off at night. It simply kept going. But here's where it gets really strange. Cortisol is only half the story. And most sleep content never mentions what happens next. Your brain produces a chemical called adenosine throughout every waking hour. Every hour of consciousness, adenosine accumulates. And that buildup is what creates what scientists call sleep pressure, the biological sensation of genuinely, physically needing sleep. This is why after 16 hours of wakefulness, most people feel authentically exhausted by evening, not just mentally tired, physiologically compelled toward rest. That is adenosine doing its job. But here's what chronic stress does to that system. A 2023 study published in Nature Neuroscience found that sustained stress hormones, particularly elevated cortisol, interfere with adenosine receptor sensitivity. In practical terms, your brain stops correctly reading the "I am tired and need sleep" signal. You have accumulated more than enough adenosine to feel exhausted, and you do feel exhausted. But the cortisol circulating in your system is essentially jamming the signal. The lock and the key no longer connect. This explains a phenomenon millions of people experience, but can never quite articulate. Tired, but wired. The body is genuinely depleted. The mind is running at full capacity.
And lying in bed feels less like rest and more like lying on a live electric wire. That is not imagination. That is not anxiety disorder. That is a measurable collision of two competing biological systems. And there is one more layer that makes the full picture complete. When the amygdala activates under stress, it triggers what sleep researchers call hyperarousal. Your autonomic nervous system shifts towards sympathetic dominance. Heart rate increases subtly. Core body temperature rises. Muscle tension spreads across the shoulders and jaw. Breathing becomes shallower. These are the exact opposite conditions your body needs to initiate sleep. Sleep requires falling core temperature, parasympathetic nervous system dominance, slow, rhythmic breathing, muscle release. Chronic stress produces rising temperature, sympathetic activation, rapid, shallow breathing, muscle tension. They are physiologically incompatible states. Dr. Charles Morin, one of the world's leading insomnia researchers at Laval University, has described chronic stress insomnia as a nervous system stuck in what he calls perpetual readiness. The brain is continuously scanning for threats, and a brain on threat watch cannot surrender into sleep. It is not unwilling to sleep, it is physiologically incapable. And if you have ever found yourself lying in a quiet room, genuinely wanting nothing more than to fall asleep, and simply being unable to, now you understand why. It was never about wanting it enough. It was never about discipline. It was biology. Now that you understand the actual mechanism, let's talk about why the standard approaches fail. Because they do fail. For specific, predictable, entirely understandable reasons. The first mistake: melatonin. Melatonin has become the cultural default for sleep problems. Sales in the United States alone exceed $800 million per year. It is in gummies, in tea blends, in children's supplements, in sleep sprays you can find at any pharmacy. And for stress-induced insomnia specifically, it is almost entirely the wrong intervention.
Here's why. Melatonin is a timing hormone, not a sedative. Its biological job is to signal to your brain that darkness has arrived, essentially telling your circadian clock that it is nighttime. In jet lag, in shift work, in cases where the timing of sleep has genuinely shifted out of alignment, melatonin can play a real, meaningful role in resetting that clock. But in stress-induced insomnia, your circadian timing is not the problem. Your body knows it's nighttime. Your brain knows it's nighttime. The problem is hyperarousal, elevated cortisol, disrupted adenosine signaling. Melatonin touches none of those systems. A comprehensive 2022 meta-analysis published in the Journal of Sleep Research confirmed what researchers have known for years. Melatonin's effect size for sleep onset insomnia is small. Approximately 7 to 8 minutes faster sleep onset in populations without circadian disorders. 7 minutes. For someone who has been lying awake for 90 minutes with a racing mind, 7 minutes is not a solution. The second mistake: alcohol. Alcohol does reduce sleep onset time. This is true. It is a central nervous system depressant, and it measurably shortens how long it takes to fall asleep. But what happens after that initial sedation is the problem. As your liver metabolizes alcohol through the night, progressively, hour by hour, it triggers a rebound activation of the precise stress systems you were suppressing. Cortisol levels surge in the second half of the night. REM sleep is dramatically compressed. Sleep architecture fragments. A 2020 study published in JMIR Mental Health found that even moderate alcohol consumption reduced objective sleep quality by 24% in participants who believed it was genuinely helping them sleep. They felt they were sleeping better. Measured by sensors, they were sleeping significantly worse. The third mistake: the wind-down routine that becomes its own source of stress. Sleep hygiene advice is not wrong. Dim your lights. Take a warm bath. Avoid screens. These things help at the margins. But there is a subtle and damaging way this advice backfires. When you follow a rigid pre-sleep ritual and still can't sleep, the ritual itself becomes associated with the anxiety of not sleeping. Your brain begins to learn that the bath, the dim lights, the lavender diffuser, these are the cues that precede the frustration, the lying awake, the staring at the ceiling. Psychologists call this conditioned arousal. Your nervous system has learned to associate your bed, or even the act of preparing for bed, with wakefulness and anxiety rather than rest. No amount of lavender can uncondition a conditioned arousal response. The fourth mistake: trying harder. This is perhaps the most counterproductive thing a person with stress insomnia can do. Sleep is not an effortful act. It requires the complete, total suspension of effort. The moment you start monitoring yourself for sleep, watching for it, checking your breath, assessing your relaxation, silently asking, "Am I asleep yet?" you activate the prefrontal cortex, the analytical, monitoring, evaluating part of your brain. And that activation is one of the most powerful neural inhibitors of sleep initiation known to sleep science. The harder you try to sleep, the more awake you become. Every time. So what does work? Let me give you 3 interventions, each targeting a different part of the biological mechanism we've been discussing, and each supported by substantial clinical evidence, not anecdote, not tradition, controlled research. The first technique: cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, known as CBTI. This is the intervention with the strongest, most consistent evidence base in all of sleep medicine. And the majority of people who struggle with chronic insomnia have never heard of it. A 2022 meta-analysis published in Sleep, the official journal of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, reviewed 87 randomized controlled trials and found that CBT1 outperforms sleep medication in both short-term and long-term outcomes. Not occasionally, consistently, across populations, across age groups, across severity levels. The American College of Physicians now recommends CBTI as the first-line treatment for chronic insomnia, ahead of any pharmacological intervention. CBTI has 5 core components. The 2 most powerful for stress-induced insomnia are these. Stimulus control. This directly targets conditioned arousal. The core rule is simple. Your bed is for sleep and intimacy only. Nothing else. No reading, no scrolling, no watching. And if you find yourself lying awake for more than 20 minutes, you get up. You go to another room. You do something calm and unstimulating. Dim lighting, gentle reading,
Slow breathing. You return to bed only when you feel genuinely sleepy.
This feels counterintuitive. It feels like giving up. But what it is actually doing over 2 to 4 weeks of consistent practice is breaking the learned association your brain has built between the bed and the state of anxious wakefulness. The bed becomes a sleep cue again. Sleep restriction therapy. This is the component that most surprises people. The idea is to temporarily compress your time in bed to rebuild what sleep scientists call sleep efficiency. If you're currently spending 9 hours in bed, but only actually sleeping 5, you restrict your allowable sleep window to something close to 5 hours. You go to bed later, you wake at a fixed time regardless, and you do not nap. This is uncomfortable, particularly in the first week. Sleep deprivation accumulates intentionally, creating powerful sleep pressure. But that pressure works. The following nights, sleep onset becomes faster. Nighttime waking decreases. The proportion of deep, restorative sleep increases dramatically. And over 3 to 4 weeks, the window gradually expands back toward a normal duration, now with far greater efficiency and stability. A controlled trial from Oxford University followed participants with chronic insomnia through a full 6-week CBTI program. At follow-up, 80% no longer met clinical criteria for insomnia. Sleep medication produces no comparable long-term result. The second technique, paradoxical intention. This is one of the most counterintuitive and one of the most genuinely effective strategies ever documented for stress-induced hyperarousal. The instruction is this: when you get into bed, try to stay awake. Not dramatically. No caffeine, no bright lights, no stimulation. Simply lie in the darkness and gently, passively attempt to keep your eyes open. Do not try to sleep. Make staying awake the mild, relaxed intention. This sounds absurd, which is exactly why it works. The act of trying to sleep creates performance anxiety, an arousal loop built around the fear of failure. When you reverse the intention, when sleep is explicitly not the goal anymore, that anxiety has nothing to attach to. It deflates. Your brain stops monitoring itself for sleep readiness. It stops evaluating whether sleep is happening. And without that monitoring, without that effortful watchfulness, sleep is free to arrive on its own. A 2015 meta-analysis in behavior research and therapy confirmed that paradoxical intention measurably reduces sleep onset anxiety and shortens the time to sleep onset in insomnia patients, particularly those whose primary complaint is racing thoughts and hyperarousal. The third technique, the cortisol reset, the physiological sigh. Researchers at Stanford University published findings in Cell Reports Medicine on what they documented as the fastest voluntary method for reducing physiological stress arousal. They called it the physiological sigh. The breathing pattern is specific. A full inhale through the nose, filling the lungs completely. Then, without exhaling, a short additional sniff through the nose, a second small breath on top of the first, followed by a long, slow, extended exhale through the mouth, as long as you can comfortably sustain. The mechanism behind this is elegant. The extended exhale, longer than the inhale, creates a slight slowing of the heart rate and directly activates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the primary pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system, the biological counterbalance to your stress response. When the vagus nerve activates, it sends a signal throughout the body: stand down. Cortisol production slows, heart rate stabilizes, muscle tension releases, core body temperature begins to fall. 5 of these breaths, done slowly and deliberately in the 20 to 30 minutes before bed, has been shown to measurably reduce cortisol levels and heart rate variability within minutes. No supplement required, no prescription, no equipment,
no specific training. And critically, unlike melatonin, unlike a hot bath, unlike counting sheep, this technique works on the actual physiological blockage, not around it, on it. Pair this consistently with a fixed wake time, the same time every morning regardless of how much you slept the night before, and you begin to restore the circadian architecture that chronic stress has spent months or years eroding. It does not happen overnight. Nothing honest does. But it happens. Here's what I want to leave you with, and this part does not come from a journal article. When we talk about stress and sleep, we almost always frame stress as the enemy and sleep as the innocent victim. Stress attacks, sleep suffers. I want to offer you a different frame, because I think it changes everything about how you approach this. Your nervous system is not malfunctioning. It is doing precisely what it was designed to do, for a world that no longer exists.
When your ancestors faced real, immediate threats, predators, conflict, scarcity, survival, the HPA axis kept them alert through dangerous nights. Sleep was a luxury that required safety, and safety wasn't assumed. It had to be assessed, confirmed, and sustained before the brain would allow the body to truly rest. That system still lives inside you. It is 300,000 years old, and it cannot distinguish between a predator at the cave entrance and an unanswered email marked urgent. This is worth sitting with. You are not broken. You are not failing at sleep. You are a thoroughly modern human being operating an ancient piece of protective hardware in an environment it was never designed for. And the challenge, the actual work, is not to silence that system. You cannot silence it, and you would not want to. The challenge is to give it consistent, repeated evidence of safety until it learns, not intellectually, but in the body, in the cells, that nighttime is not a threat window. That the dangers of tomorrow can be set down tonight. That is what stimulus control communicates. That is what sleep restriction restores. That is what the physiological sigh says to your vagus nerve in a language older than words. They are not tricks. They are not hacks. They are messages sent to a very old, very intelligent part of your nervous system. And when that nervous system finally receives enough consistent messages of safety to believe them, sleep does not need to be chased. It arrives. If you want to go deeper on this, I put together a complete guide. It covers the full CBTI protocol step by step, including a sleep restriction calculator, the specific stimulus control schedule, and the evening breathing sequence with precise timing. Links in the comments. Check it out if you want it. One thing before you go. If any of what you heard today resonated, if you recognized yourself in that 3 a.m. scenario, I want you to know something. The brain that learned to stay awake can learn to let go. The research is unambiguous on this. The biology is reversible. The conditioned arousal response, the elevated evening cortisol, the adenosine receptor interference, all of it responds to consistent, targeted intervention. This is not a permanent state. It just feels like one. If this helped, subscribe. I release new sleep research every week, translated from the scientific journals into something you can actually use. And if you know someone who's been struggling with this, who has tried everything, who is exhausted and frustrated and starting to believe this is just who they are now, share this with them. Sometimes understanding the actual mechanism is the thing that finally unlocks something. I'll see you in the next one.